Welcome back, free thinkers. In part 5 of this foundational video series, I'm going to be covering the lost tools of learning, the 7 liberal arts, and explaining why this is probably the most important key to freeing humanity. This is my crash course in critical thinking.
Because once you know how the mind works, you can control it, and once you can control it, you can focus it. You can't focus or concentrate something you don't understand.
Okay, let's get started. Now, some might say that it's a little bit bold to title a video, "Is this the most important video in the world?" But I think by the end of this video, you might understand where I'm coming from when I ask that question. There's a lot of videos out there that are more geared towards entertainment and exposing problems. This video here is about truly exposing the root of the problem. So understanding this is the fundamental key to human emancipation from mental slavery. As Thoreau told us, there are 1,000 hacking at the branches of evil to one who is striking at the root. And I use this quote all the time in showing that people are just obsessing on the problems and complaining about what's being done to us instead of striking at the root, which is figuring out what can we do to remedy this situation. How can we get out of this mess? And as long as we keep hacking at the branches of evil, we're never going to escape this condition that we're in right now. It's going to continue to get worse. So there has to be something that we need to focus on moving forward if we're ever going to free ourselves. And again, like I've been building up to in this series, this is the primary key. And this is something I learned 12 years ago, and this is what completely changed my course. That's the importance of this. So again, I'll ask at the end of this video the same question. But moving forward, a lot of people know Bob Marley's Redemption song and the lyrics, "Emancipate yourself from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds." And it's such a profound statement. It's up to us to free our minds. And that's what this video is about. It's about the key to freeing your mind. But this is just a small clip from an even more powerful quote from Marcus Garvey. And I'm going to read this to you just to really emphasize what they're saying. "We are going to emancipate ourselves from mental slavery, because whilst others might free the body, none but ourselves can free the mind. Mind is your only ruler, sovereign." So anything else out there trying to rule you, it's illegitimate. Your mind is your ruler. However, the man who is not able to develop and use his mind is bound to be the slave of another man who uses his mind. So again, that's a very powerful statement, showing that we have to learn to control and develop and use the mind as it's intended to, or we will be the slave of others. And if you look around the world, there's billions of people in the world today who never learned how to use their mind correctly. And that's why I start this video series with that clip in the introduction of this quote right here. Because once you know how the mind works, you can control it. And once you can control it, you can focus it. You can't focus and concentrate something you don't understand. And so again, this is the key. This is why I'm doing this video and why it's so vitally important to understand this, because you look on social media everywhere in the world today, you see people complaining and thinking that they're right and the other person is wrong, when by the end of this video, you'll see that a lot of people are wrong about a lot of things. And it's because we haven't learned how the mind works. We haven't learned how to think. We've been taught what to think, but there's a big difference between the two. And that's why I did the 2 videos before this and laying the foundation for this video series, Dorothy Sayers' speech, The Lost Tools of Learning, because they truly are lost tools. They're out there. We can find them. I found them. Thousands of people have found them. But until billions find them, we're still going to be in a state of enslavement worldwide as a species, as the human race. And it's again why the last video covered the term liberal. And I showed you how it's been perverted over the centuries to mean something completely different from its original meaning. Because its original meaning is what I'm going to be talking about in this video today. So, I want to quickly do a recap of parts 1 to 4, just so we can get up to speed here. In part 1, I talked about Kaizen, that's the name of the channel, and that it is the Japanese philosophy of constant and never-ending improvement, and identifying problems and working towards the solutions. So again, that's what this channel is going to be about. It's going to be about Kaizen, identifying the problems in the world, and then number 2, applying natural law to come up with the solutions, because natural law is the omnipotent force controlling everything. And every single person in the world is bound by natural law. Whether you believe it or not, it's always in effect. And once we learn the 4 moral maxims of natural law, and once we reclaim the ability to think critically, to reclaim our minds, everybody can start doing this. And again, that's when we'll start moving the world in a better direction. Because right now we're all being herded because most people don't have these skills. And it's a skill, it's a tool, just like everything else. I talked about the lost tools of learning. We have been purposely dumbed down by the ruling classes throughout all of history. And I'm going to get into that later on in this video. And then the real meaning of the word liberal, which is an individual of knowledge and character. It's not at all this idea of big government taking care of you and liberal policies and the whole 9 yards. It's the meaning of it has been completely inverted, and if you haven't seen that last video, I suggest you go back and watch that one as well. So, what I want to do now is give you a perfect analogy for what you're about to learn. And I was taught this, I don't even remember, I think it might have been Richard Grove years ago in his Tragedy and Hope podcast. But it really is the perfect analogy to understand the importance of the liberal arts. So what we have here is a picture of a brain, which a lot of people equate to the mind. And so what is the mind? The mind is your biological computer, analyzing data input from various sources and giving commands to the body via your consciousness and neural pathways to create output or action. So that's what the mind is. Your mind is the captain of your ship, your body. It's the captain of your actions. It's the captain of how you interact with the world and one another. Okay? If your mind is corrupted and the data is corrupted in your mind, you're going to make bad decisions. You're going to make decisions and take actions that are in violation of natural law, and ultimately you're going to suffer the consequence of that. And this reminds me of going all the way back to high school, when I was a junior in high school, and I took my first ever computer class, and it was a basic course on computer programming. And the first thing they teach you on day one in that class is an acronym called GIGO. And what they're telling you is that whatever you program into the computer is what's going to come out of the computer. So what this stands for is garbage in, garbage out. So if you program a bunch of garbage in, you're going to get garbage out. And that's the exact same analogy we see with our minds, with culture, with society, with our world today. We're being bombarded every single day with garbage. And people are spewing it back out. We have a garbage in, garbage out society. And that's a major problem. And that needs to change. So we are programmed from birth and bombarded daily with stimuli from a wide variety of different sources. And we have to discern from that constant barrage how to live and act in society. So here we have this biological computer that's being programmed from the day we're born. All right? School, media, culture, religion, friends, society, books, propaganda, music, family, television, government, corporations, and a whole myriad of other sources of input that we're constantly getting every day. And we form a perception of our world, a perception of the reality out there. And if these inputs are perverted, just like they perverted the word liberal, then our perception of the world is going to be perverted. And every single day what we do is we take in the information and decide what is in our best interests based on our beliefs, and what our intuition tells us will give us the best outcome based on certain situations. So our mind is a computer processing all this information and telling us what we should do based on that information. But what if that information isn't correct? So how do we protect ourselves? So here's another question for you. When you buy a computer, what's one of the first things you do? You boot it up, you put your information in there, install it, you go on the internet. What's one of the first things you want to do to protect yourselves from people out there who might want to hack your computer, hack your data, corrupt your data? Put spyware on there, put malware. What's one of the first things you do? Well, you install an antivirus program. And this is the one that I use. But you install that antivirus program so that your data doesn't get corrupted, so that the brain of the computer doesn't stop working correctly. So this analogy here, what are the 7 liberal arts? So the liberal arts are the antivirus program for your mind. By learning and internalizing the liberal arts, especially the language arts, you will essentially become bulletproof from those trying to deceive you and coerce you to act against your will or best interests. So, just like you protect your computer, your biological computer needs to be protected as well. And without these tools, you're literally laid bare to the world. And again, all we have to do is look at the world and look what's happened over the centuries. People blindly believe what they're told as truth without ever questioning. And the liberal arts teach you how to question and how to discern truth from fiction, and whether to accept something that you're being told or to reject it to protect yourself. So that's one of the most powerful analogies you can use to truly understand what we're doing here, is that we're installing an antivirus program for the mind. So what are the 7 liberal arts? And this is a question that I have posed to many, many people over the past 12 years since I first started learning them, because I wanted to see if anybody else had ever heard of them, or if was I the only one that didn't know. And not a single person in 12 years has been able to answer the question correctly. They can't even get one right. What I get most commonly are people think back to college, and what they'll do is they'll spout off courses that they took in college, like humanities, social studies, things like gender studies, women's rights, things like that. That's what they equate liberal arts to essentially college courses that they took, because they went to a liberal arts college and that's what they learned. But most liberal arts colleges are not teaching the liberal arts, and you're not being taught the liberal arts in grade school or high school or any bit of your educational process from the time you're born. Because again, as Dorothy Sayers told us, this curriculum, these tools were taken out by design, because the ruling classes wanted a population that could not think for themselves and just do what they're told. So, what are the 7 liberal arts? Well, there's 3 language arts called the Trivium and 4 scientific arts called the Quadrivium. The language arts are what we need to understand to effectively communicate with one another. Dropping the ego, dropping the emotions, and just understanding that, yeah, I have ideas, you have ideas, and this is how we come to a meeting of the minds. The language arts are grammar, logic, and rhetoric. And I'm going to get into these a little bit deeper later on, but just basically at the outset, just a basic understanding. Grammar defines the facts, who, what, when, where. Logic defines the why, or the reasoning. And rhetoric defines how we communicate that, how we communicate the facts and the reasoning. So by mastering these and learning them in the way they're supposed to be learned, we can arm ourselves with the protection against lies, or deception or coercion. The scientific arts are number, geometry, music, and cosmology. Number is essentially just the basic study of numerology and basic addition, subtraction. It's just the basic mathematics. Geometry is the study of number in space. Music is the study of number in time. And cosmology is the study of number in space and time. And that covers everything. Once you have a fundamental working knowledge of these 7 liberal arts, you can learn anything. Because you can apply this knowledge to thinking logically about everything and discerning, again, truth from fiction based on having the tools in your toolbox to truly understand what someone else is trying to tell you, or what you yourself are just trying to learn and understand yourself from your own curiosity. These are the tools. These are the keys. And they all fit together. And as I was making this video, I came across one of the ads on YouTube. I want to play for you here because it truly shows a connection between geometry and logic. Like I said, they all fit together. And once you understand how they all fit together, you see the beauty in learning these liberal arts. So what we have here, again, it's a 2-minute video. I'm going to play it. I'm going to pause it a couple times to emphasize some points.
You don't know what you're supposed to do, and somehow it all just comes together. And then you don't know why you wouldn't have known it in the first place. By studying geometry, we can think about our first principles, think about our underlying assumptions, and think about how we use reasoning skills and logic skills to put those arguments together.
So right here, he's saying by using geometry, if we're taught geometry right, we're able to put all of these skills together logically. And again, so this understanding geometry helps you to sharpen the tools of thinking logically, which is part of the language arts.
Geometry itself is a way to think about those underlying assumptions, and from those assumptions just build up this huge body of knowledge.
So to gain the body of knowledge, to become a true liberal, someone of knowledge, you have to learn all of these, because it's understanding how all 7 fit together that bring us to truth in the world.
And I don't think people understand that big picture of how all of this fits together and how it has to be the way that it is.
We do a disservice to young people by not teaching them all the steps in mathematics.
Yeah, think about that. We do a disservice to young people by not teaching them all the steps in mathematics. Look at what Common Core has done to the children of the world today. My neighbor had a daughter who was learning Common Core math, and I went over and I looked, I'm like, I just couldn't even believe how they were trying to teach these people. And it's designed to confuse the mind instead of teaching them the correct way, which is to unlock the mind so that they can understand the world and think logically about things. So, I mean, this is such a profound statement you just made.
Because it's liberating to know.
You said it's liberating to know. By understanding geometry the way it's supposed to be understood, it frees the mind. It allows the mind to think logically the way it's supposed to.
And by discarding Euclid, you have cut them off from a way to understand logic from which all accurate reasoning comes. And you've cut them off from also understanding the beauty of the relationships in nature.
So by understanding the liberal arts, you understand the relationships of everything in the natural world. And again, why natural law is so important, and why, if we align with it, the world will begin to heal. And it all starts with these 7 liberal arts and understanding the keys to learning and the keys to acquiring true knowledge.
Most of you might experience your geometry and other math classes to be about calculation and formulas and memorization. But in our study of geometry, and in particular the study of Euclidean geometry, the core question and concern is not so much how and how we calculate, but rather why.
We will be looking at logic, we'll be looking at reasoning skills, we'll be getting into the mind of Euclid and trying to understand how he put these pieces together, how he organized this. So I hope as we go forward in this course that you'll have that eureka moment where you can understand how it all fits together. I'm Thomas Trelaw.
And I am David Murphy. This is our course in mathematics and logic. Let's begin.
So again, Hillsdale College, I really hadn't known much about them until I saw this, and I went and checked them out. And I mean, this is one college in Michigan that is truly teaching the 7 liberal arts to their students. So this course is free online. I'll put a link below. You can go. All you got to do is put in your email address, and you have access to the entire course. It's 11 sections long. It's about a half hour piece, and there's quizzes in there. There's a final test. So again, if you're a homeschooler, if you just want to learn a little bit more about how to use geometry to understand logic a little bit better, it's a highly recommended course. So again, link will be below. But moving forward, since you talked about the connection between geometry and logic, let's take a look at a very famous theorem from geometry, the Pythagorean theorem, which states that the hypotenuse of a right angled triangle will always equal a squared plus b squared. And I started thinking about this, and it's really interesting because the first 3 whole numbers that prove the Pythagorean theorem are 3, 4, and 5. And the next are 6, 8, and 10, and then 9, and so on. So 3, 6, and 9 are the first lowest whole numbers that prove the Pythagorean theorem. And then you go back to what Tesla said, that if you only knew the magnificence of 3, 6, and 9, then you would have a key to the universe. If you want to find the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. So there's something going on with these numbers, 3, 6, and 9, right? There's something special about them. Tesla had realized it. And if you look at how knowledge has been kept from us by the secret societies and the ruling classes, we can question, is it a possibility that the number 3 is perhaps the key to understanding the occulted knowledge which has been used to control the masses throughout history? You look at all these symbols. You have the pyramid. You got the 3 sides. You got the all-seeing eye of providence. And then you've got 33, which is a high Masonic number, which they rub in our face all the time. And if you add 3 to 3, you get 6. If you multiply 3 to 3, you get 9. So again, this is just speculation, but I thought it was interesting once I saw that clip about how geometry ties into logic, and then the Tesla quote. So, again, I thought it was interesting to add this little part in here. 3, 6, 9 relate to the tripod, seed, and flower of life. So there's something here that we connect to geometry by using the number 3. So let's just start with the number 3 and go back to the Pythagorean theorem. So we've got 3, 4, and 5. So if we take 3, 4, and 5 and we apply it to the liberal arts, we've already learned that we have 3 language arts, which is essentially the Socratic method for drawing truth out of other people. Questioning until you come to a meeting of the minds. we have 4 scientific arts, which we use the scientific method to discern the truth about the material world. So we got 3 language arts, 4 scientific arts. There's your 7 liberal arts. What's the 5? Well, 5 is our gift from our Creator. It's our 5 senses: vision, hearing, smell, taste, and touch, also called your intuition, right? So we experience the world through these 5 different senses, and we intuitively learn and understand. But to truly understand the world, we have these 7 liberal arts: your language arts, your scientific arts, and your intuition. That puts everything together. This is how we arrive at truth. So all those people out there who say that there is no such thing as truth, all the solipsists, there is a way to get to truth, and this is the way. And you know you're at truth once all ambiguity has been removed via these tools. So let's pull back a little bit and look at the macro, because we're going to go back to the language arts, the Trivium, because that's what the rest of this video is going to be about. If we look at these different parts of arriving at truth, we can see that the scientific arts are what we primarily use to help us define our grammar, our facts. So we can put grammar right there. Our intuition and our senses is the best way for us to define or even question why. So that's where logic would go. And then the language arts are what we use to communicate what we've learned through our questioning and seeking the facts. That's where the rhetoric comes in. So we've got grammar, logic, and rhetoric. And the Trivium in Latin essentially translates to where 3 roads converge or meet. So where do those 3 roads meet? They meet at the truth. So this is how we arrive at truth in the world. We have to learn the language arts. We have to learn the scientific arts, because we all have our 5 senses, and those 5 senses can be deceived if we don't understand the 7 liberal arts. And that's why it's so important to learn and understand this curriculum, which was taken from us, again, by design. Dorothy Sayers had laid it out very clearly in her speech from 1947, why it was so important to restore these lost tools of learning. So there you go. That's the basic understanding of grammar, logic, and rhetoric, and how we use it to get to truth. Now I'm going to cover some resources for learning. So how do we learn to acquire these tools so that we too can become knowledgeable, so that we too can protect ourselves from the lies that are being, bombarded at society every single day? Well, first of all, we've got the website that I put together back in 2020. And what I've got here, it's a crash course in critical thinking. This is probably the most important page on the Freedom Project 2020 website, besides the Plan to Free Humanity. But what we have is, it's broken down into 2 parts. And the first part is an understanding of how the American education system was hijacked. And start off with this quote from Johann Gottlieb Fichte, which is, and this is the system that was brought from the Prussian schooling model back in the early to mid 1800s. And once you hear this quote, you'll understand why things are the way they are today and how everything happened. So he says, the schools must fashion the person and fashion him in such a way that he simply cannot will otherwise than what you wish him to will. Education should aim at destroying free will, so that after pupils are thus schooled, they will be incapable throughout the rest of their lives of thinking or acting otherwise than as their schoolmasters would have wished. When this technique has been perfected, and it has been, every government that has been in charge of education for more than 1 generation, and we're now 6 generations on, will be able to control its subjects securely without the need of armies or policemen. And while we still have armies and policemen today, All you have to do is look at the last 2.5 years to see that people are policing one another. It's clear as day. So has their plan worked? Yes, it's worked. How do we get our power back? We have to reclaim the lost tools of learning. So going through, again, this is an incredible resource. You've got 4-page basic history of the Prussian industrial public schooling model. We've got a speech here called Transformational Education, Preparing Our Children for Global Citizenship. And what's global citizenship? It's the Great Reset. It's SDG 2030. It's Agenda 21. He goes through the whole history here of how we got to this point. There's the 5-hour interview with John Taylor Gatto from Richard Grove and Tragedy and Hope, the ultimate history lesson. Again, shows you how it was done, shows you how we reclaim our minds. I've got 3 interviews with Charlotte Iserbyt here, who wrote The Deliberate Dumbing Down of America. The book is here as well. You've got the Leipzig Connection. And then at the bottom, you've got Restoring Critical Thinking in Captured Populations. Now, this is how I learned the Trivium 12 years ago. This is the actual curriculum that I took to learn what I've learned today. And it's an excellent 3-part podcast series. They're all here. You can listen to them right here. You've got additional documentation to help, go through and reaffirm what you've learned. So everything is right here on the website. You've even got The Lost Tools of Learning, the speech by Dorothy Sayers at the bottom. And I'm going to be adding all these videos on this page too. So, everything is right here. And again, I'll link to it in the bottom. But that's an incredible resource for you. Again, for you to learn on your own, and if you're homeschooling, it's a great resource for your children. Additional resources are books that I've used to, again, reinforce my learning. We've got the Trivium, The Liberal Arts of Grammar, Logic, and Rhetoric by Sister Miriam Joseph. And I'm going to get into some more details from these books. The Metalogicon, John of Salisbury. Excellent books. Sister Miriam Joseph, she explains why it's so important, and then she explains how to acquire these tools. The Metalogicon was written almost 900 years ago. It was a defense of the verbal and logical arts of the Trivium because he saw that the ruling class was trying to take it away as well. So again, it's an explanation of why it's so important to teach the masses this curriculum. We also have excellent resources for homeschoolers here. The Trivium and Quadrivium books by Wooden Books. These are all books that I have as well. If you've got multiple children and you're a homeschooler, the 4 on the bottom, you've got grammar, logic, rhetoric, and ethics, which is the art of character. All 4 of these books are in the big Trivium book, but if you've got children and you want to teach them the subject separately, it's good to get all of these books so that they can learn one, on their own. These are only 60 pages a piece. This is a big book of, 500 or 600 pages. But, they're amazing books. And this one here has 3 additional books in it. So, again, more excellent resources for personal learning and teaching your children. And then the Quadrivium as well. So, we have to take the personal responsibility to learn this information. It's never going to be given to you. It wasn't given to you in school, and it's not going to be given to you as you go through life. This is our personal responsibility. This is how we unlock our mind. This is how we, what I'm always saying, reclaim our minds. Because once we reclaim our minds, we can reclaim our power and we can reclaim our world. So again, these are resources that are excellent no matter where you are in life. If we want a free world, we need to learn this information. I've done it myself. I'd never tell anybody to do anything that I wouldn't do for myself, but I've done it, okay? I've done it. I've learned it. That's why I'm able now to teach it to other people, because I was taught by people that learned it themselves. And that's how it works. Each one teach one. That's how we unite and we rise and we take back our power. We have to reclaim the mind first. So I'm going to get a little bit deeper into the Trivium book now by Sister Miriam Joseph and just go through some of the quotes I got from there. In a true liberal education, the essential activity of the student is to relate the facts learned into a unified organic whole, to assimilate them as the rose assimilates food from the soil and increases in size, vitality, and beauty. So again, what she's saying is in a liberal education, you learn how to think. You learn how to go get the data and put it together and assimilate it into an organic whole so that you can understand things on a level that you're not currently understanding them. Just as a rose blooms, the more nutrition a rose gets from the soil, the healthier it is, and the larger the bloom gets. The more we're able to assimilate knowledge by using these tools, the more wisdom we gain, the more knowledge we gain, and the more we're able to understand the world as it is in reality, as opposed to the fictional, false reality we're given by all those inputs we saw earlier. This is very important because this separates the difference between being taught what to think and being taught how to think. The 7 liberal arts differ essentially from the many utilitarian arts, such as carpentry, masonry, plumbing, salesmanship, printing, editing, banking, law, medicine, or the care of souls, and from the 7 fine arts, architecture, instrumental music, sculpture, painting, literature, the drama, and the dance. She goes on to say, the utilitarian or servile arts enable one to be a servant of another person, of the state, of a corporation, or of a business, and to earn a living. The liberal arts, in contrast, teach one how to live. They teach one how to think. They train the faculties of the mind and bring them to perfection. They enable a person to rise above his material environment, to live an intellectual, irrational, and therefore a free life in gaining truth. And again, there's that reference to truth. How do we get to truth? We have to understand. We have to acquire these tools. And she goes on to quote John 8:3-2, you shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. How do you become free? You have to know the truth. How do you know the truth? You have to acquire the tools of knowledge, the tools of knowing. So we're going to break down grammar, logic, and rhetoric now. These are all excerpts from the book as well, just so you have a better understanding of these 3 language arts. And I'm going to leave it at this. And again, I've given you the resources to go and learn it on your own, but this is not meant to be an exhaustive deep dive into the language arts. This is an introduction so that you understand what's missing and what you need to learn. But just to cover the basics here, grammar is the art of inventing and combining symbols, where logic is the art of thinking, and rhetoric is the art of communication. Grammar is concerned with the thing as it is symbolized. Logic is concerned with the thing as it is known. And rhetoric is concerned with the thing as it is communicated. So we use grammar to define things. We know them by that definition, and then we communicate them by understanding the grammar and logic. Grammar prescribes how to combine words so as to form sentences correctly. Logic prescribes how to combine concepts into reasoning to ultimately achieve truth. And rhetoric prescribes how to combine sentences with coherence, clarity, force, and beauty to communicate your ideas effectively. Regarding grammar, correctness is the norm of phonetics, spelling, and grammar. Regarding logic, truth is the norm of logic. So right there, she talks about truth twice with understanding logic. That's the key to getting to truth. You have to be able to reason correctly. You use grammar and rhetoric to do that, as well as the 4 scientific arts. Effectiveness is the norm of rhetoric. So correctness, truth, and effectiveness. So again, grammar, logic, and rhetoric, you need to understand how all 3 of these fit together to become an effective communicator and to become a person who effectively understands what others are saying to you, so that you can discern truth from fiction, so that you can fine-tune your BS meter. And then a couple final quotes here from her. Logic is the art of thinking, grammar the art of inventing symbols and combining them to express thought, and rhetoric the art of communicating thought from one mind to another, the adaptation of language to circumstance. Correctness in thinking is the normal means to reach truth. So if you're not correctly thinking, if you're not applying these skills, you may not get to the truth. You may stumble across it here and there, but for the most part, you're walking blind through the world. Which is the conformity of thought with things as they are, with reality. So again, this is how you understand objective reality. Not the false reality we're given, but true objective reality. There's a difference between the two. Most people are operating on false reality because they don't have the skills and the tools to discern truth from fiction. Now, moving on to the Metalogicon from John of Salisbury. Now, he wrote this, and I'll read the second one here first. The Metalogicon was composed to refute attacks made on the Trivium by a group whose spokesman John dubs Cornificius, the detractor of Virgil and the liberal arts, who was mentioned by Donatus in his Life of Virgil. So he wrote this masterpiece as a way to defend teaching the liberal arts to everyone. Because as you go through this book, you understand that this group that was attacking the Trivium, it was essentially a group of ruling class elitists who didn't want it taught, so they came up with the gaslighting excuses why it shouldn't be taught. So he went on to explain why it must be taught, and I'm going to get into some of his quotes later on, but in the preface to this book, they write, man's civilization is the sum of his constructive achievement, the substance of his well-being, the key of his progress. Yet, in the historical development of human culture, one of the most essential and determining factors has ever been education. Paradoxically, education is both a product and a producer of civilization. So again, if someone gets a hold of education, they can steer the product of civilization where they want. And they can also produce the civilization they want. So it's a paradox. Besides being the regenerative process whereby man transmits his culture for the good, it is also the revitalizing means whereby he reforms it in case it's gone bad. So again, education is a key, and when education has been hijacked and perverted, which it has been, culture goes astray. And so we need to use education as the means to reform it, and it's in desperate need of reforming. I think everybody will agree with that. But these are the tools that we use to reform it. We have to learn the liberal arts and become truly liberal individuals and share this information with everyone in the world so that we can get to that next level and fix society and the human condition. So moving forward, I'm going to go over some of the excerpts from this book. And what he's talking about here is the after effects of what would happen if you were to remove these lost tools of learning, the liberal arts, from the curriculum. And this is what he says. He says, having blocked the road to peace, he incites the forces of nature to concur for the destruction of the world. And he's talking about Cornificius and this group of people who are trying to block the teaching of this curriculum. He says, by doing that, you incite the forces of nature to concur for the destruction of the world. All right? Is the world being destroyed? Order out of chaos? Did they not create the chaos so that they can bring in a new order? He's talking about this 900 years ago. This is to sow discord among brothers, to supply arms to those at peace, and last but not least, to establish a new and great chasm between God and man. So again, it separates us from our Creator, from natural law, because we need to understand the liberal arts to understand natural law, because natural law is all objective truth. And once we understand natural law, we can all begin working to heal the world. So by taking this away, you sow discord amongst brothers. You're creating dissension because people are no longer able to communicate effectively and come to terms peacefully. The creative Trinity, the one true God, has so arranged the parts of the universe that each requires the help of the others. All right, we all need one another. We're all one. And they mutually compensate for their respective deficiencies because we all have our own gifts to share. All things being, so to speak, members one of another. So again, like I've said over and over, we're all one. And we need to unite and bring all these gifts that we all have and reacquire our skills of learning. And once we do that, we can create the world that we're meant to live in. But as long as we stay fighting, and we were divided by removing these tools. They did this to purposely divide us. There is no doubt about it. Because you saw John of Salisbury, he saw 900 years ago what it was doing to his civilization back then. All things lack something when isolated. No man is an island. And are perfected on being united, since they mutually support one another. And that's what I'm calling for in all of my work. I'm calling for unity. I'm calling for unity under natural law. And the only way to understand natural law is to acquire these tools. So this is what he was talking about. This is what I've been talking about. And I just don't think people understand, because they haven't been exposed at any point in their life to this type of curriculum. That's why it's so important. He goes on to say, reason, the mother, nurse, and guardian of knowledge, as well as a virtue, frequently conceives from speech, and by this same means bears more abundant and richer fruit. So he's comparing reason to a tree bearing fruit. The more people who understand this knowledge, the more fruit the tree will produce. Reason would remain utterly barren. The tree would remain barren, or at least would fail to yield a plenteous harvest, if the faculty of speech did not bring to light its feeble conceptions and communicate the perceptions of the prudent exercise of the human mind. He's saying you can only get to reason by understanding, by gaining these tools. Without this, the tree of community, the tree of civilization, it doesn't bear good fruit. It doesn't bear a plenteous harvest. So we need these tools of speech, the grammar arts, to bring to light and to communicate perceptions of the human mind. That's how important this is. Indeed, it is this delightful and fruitful copulation of reason and speech which has given birth to so many outstanding cities. So again, he says civilization has risen because of our understanding of these language arts, these liberal arts, has made friends and allies of so many kingdoms. It's the road to peace. It's the path to peaceful coexistence. And has unified and knit together in bonds of love so many people. So again, love is the most creative force in the universe, and having these tools of reason, having these tools of critical thinking, of the language arts, is what leads to loving one another, because you're not fighting. You're coming to a meeting of the minds. Whoever tries to thrust asunder what God has joined together for the common good should rightly be adjudged a public enemy. So anyone who wants to take away these tools that allow us to understand God, to allow us to understand natural law, should be labeled an enemy of humanity. And again, look at around the world, at all of the ruling classes, at all of the people in positions of illegitimate authority, the powers that shouldn't be. They're all enemies of humanity, because they don't want us knowing what I'm teaching you here, what all these people have taught us or tried to teach us throughout the years. But again, he was suppressed, just like Socrates was suppressed and put to death for doing this exact same thing, for corrupting the youth by teaching them how to think. So that's why this is so important. I mean, he says, it leads to love, it leads to unity, it leads to building civilization. And I think I've got one more here. Although he may seem to attack eloquence alone, he undermines and uproots all liberal studies. So again, by attacking the language arts, you attack the scientific arts as well. Because without the language arts, you can't draw all of the information from the scientific arts. You essentially are prey to scientism, which is what we are prey to today. Trust the science. How many times have we heard that? So by taking away the language arts and our ability to understand, you also uproot all liberal arts, all liberal studies. You assail the whole structure of philosophy. You tear to shreds humanity's social contract, the peaceful coexistence of one another. You tear it to shreds. You destroy the means of brotherly charity and reciprocal interchange of services. You essentially destroy the free market. And this is how they were able to take over the free market economy, by taking away people's ability to think critically. John of Salisbury understood all of this at such a profound level 900 years ago. Deprived of their gift of speech, men, this is so, just look at the world today. Deprived of their gift of speech, and that's what taking away the lost tools of learning has done. What he's talking about is our ability to communicate effectively with one another, to use really effective rhetoric based on solid grammar and logic, okay? Deprived of their gift of speech, men would degenerate to the condition of brute animals. Turn on the news. Look at the world. People are acting like brute animals today. You see it every single day. You turn on the news, it's murder, it's road rage, it's people shooting. It's because we don't know how to effectively communicate with one another. Cities would seem like corrals for livestock. Is this guy like Nostradamus here? How prophetic is that? Look at how many people lined up for miles, for hours, to get food, to get tested, to get poisoned. It's all because we don't know how to think critically. I wasn't in those lines, but corrals for livestock? Sheep are livestock? I don't know. Rather than communities composed of human beings united by a common bond for the purpose of living in society, serving one another, and cooperating as friends. And that's what I've created with my natural law republic. That's what I'm proposing. Uniting in a common bond under natural law for the purpose of living in a thriving society based in abundance, not scarcity, serving one another, finding your gift and sharing it with the world, cooperating as friends. That's what I'm proposing. That's what I've created with, my natural law republic that very few people have bothered to look at. We're never going to get to freedom living in the condition we're in now. We have to begin working towards something. And I haven't seen anyone else offer a solution outside of the current paradigm, outside of trying to fix what's broken, which will never be fixed because it can't be fixed because of the people in control of it. We need to build something else and break free. Natural law is our guide. We have to reclaim the power of our minds. That's what this is about. And we can use Kaizen to identify the problems and then apply everything else to come up with the solutions. And that's what he was saying 900 years ago. That's what I'm doing. That's all I'm doing. If verbal intercommunication were withdrawn, which it has been, what contract could be duly concluded? What instruction could be given in faith and morals? No, people do whatever the hell they want to do. That's what modern liberalism is. Oh, just leave me alone. I can do whatever I want. And what agreement and mutual understanding could subsist among men? Again, this whole idea of, well, we'll just agree to disagree. That's ego. That's bravado. That's putting an anchor on progress. That's not moving us forward. Agreeing to disagree just means that you refuse to look at someone else's evidence that you may be wrong. And again, that's your ego and that's your pride. So these are such powerful words. It may thus be seen that our cornificious, ignorant, and malevolent foe of studies pertaining to eloquence attacks not merely one or even a few persons, but all civilization and political organization. This is his ultimate conclusion, that if you remove the ability of people to learn how to think, to communicate effectively with one another, to come to a meeting of the minds by understanding grammar, logic, and rhetoric in the four scientific arts, you are attacking all of humanity. Not just one person, not just a group of people, but all of humanity. That's how important it is to learn this. And this is such a powerful book because he shows that this is still the way things were almost 900 years ago in 1159 when this is published. So, again, I wanted to read these excerpts because they're powerful books to learn what we need to learn. And again, I'll put links below so that you can go get a copy yourself. What's the moral to this story? Putting it all together, a final lesson and a simple equation. Hopefully by now, you'll have come to the realization that maybe my question at the beginning, the title of this video, is true. Is this the most important video in the world? You've seen what people have said throughout this series. These tools have been taken from us by design to enslave us, to confuse us, to make us fight with one another. All right? So when I learned this over the years, I developed a simple equation to teach other people how they can immediately internalize the language arts and begin to question their beliefs and maybe see where they may be mistaken or may have been misinformed in life. So what I did is I came up with this equation. And you look at it and your mind instantly goes, well, that's not right. And that's the point. Because the point is we have an entire world, billions of people believing 5 because someone told them 5. And they're not looking at the other side of the equation. And as we know from math and growing up, both sides of that equal sign have to be the same. So you look at the equation and you know the answer is 4. But the entire world believes 5. It's because they haven't done their due diligence. And the moral of the story is you don't believe 5 because someone told you 5. You have to apply grammar and the logic to your rhetoric. And your rhetoric is what you share with one another, what you believe and what you act on. And what you speak to other people. It's everything you believe is rhetoric. However, if your rhetoric does not align, is not supported by the grammar or the logic or both, is it not your responsibility to change your rhetoric? Thus, if your rhetoric does not align with the grammar and or logic to support it, it is your personal responsibility to change your rhetoric, opinions or beliefs to align with reality. And that's the message. We live in a world where people believe 5 because someone told them 5. And they never question it. From the day they're born till the day they die. They just believe what they're told. And our entire education system has been designed to do that. To make you believe what you're told by authority figures. That's what the sitting in the chair and the ringing of the bell, the operant conditioning, it's all about. And John Taylor Gatto explains that in his 5-hour interview with Richard Grove. So now that you know all this, and you can apply it to your life, maybe the next time you talk to someone in your family or your friends or at work or even on social media, and you hear something that doesn't resonate with your intuition, how about taking this approach? Say, I hear your rhetoric. Can you show me the grammar and logic that supports that? And I think many people will be taken aback because they won't understand what you're talking about. And just repeat what you're saying. Is there any grammar or logic to support what you're saying? Or are you just repeating what you've heard from someone else without checking the grammar and logic? And if they say, what's this grammar and logic stuff? Send them to my video. Say, go watch this. Tell them the tools of learning were taken from humanity centuries ago. And we've been dumbed down. And we have a world where people just believe what they're told without ever checking the facts and the reasoning behind it. So this is the tool that we can start to use to turn civilization in a different direction and come to a meeting of the minds and peacefully coexist with one another instead of fighting. And, again, shedding the ego and dropping the emotion. I mean, everything is just, people just react emotionally in this world because their egos refuse to let them feel or think, believe that they could possibly be wrong. Everything is here in this one video that you need to know to unlock your mind. All the resources are there for you to go learn. You have a basic fundamental understanding of what you need to know now, moving forward. Is what I believe true? It may not be. I have all these other inputs. I have all this rhetoric from all those different sources we saw earlier, but do I have that antivirus program installed? Or am I wide open for hackers? Like Yuval Harari is constantly saying, we know how to hack the mind. Exactly. They've been hacking your mind your entire life with their false rhetoric, with their propaganda, with their gaslighting. All right? It's time for humanity to reclaim their minds. This is how you do it. This is the first step. This is the horse before the cart. So everybody out there complaining about the problems and pointing fingers at everyone and all the awful things that are to come. This is the route at which we all must strike. We need to look in the mirror. We need to ask ourselves, did I ever acquire these skills? If not, why? And if not, how will I acquire them? Now is the time. Without these tools, we will never get anywhere. All right? I and probably tens of thousands of people around the world have already done the work. Now it's your turn to do your work. And moving forward in this series, I'm going to be using all of what I've taught you in this foundational series as my justification for what I say in these videos coming out. So that if you question what I'm saying, go back to the foundational series. Go back and watch that video. That's the foundation of the knowledge that I'm using to critique this media. So again, I ask, is this the most important video in the world? Is there a more important video out there than this one? Because again, all the other videos out there, and I watch a ton of them, and I've watched tens of thousands of hours over the last 15 years. They're all hacking at the branches of evil. This is how we strike the root. You look in the mirror and you ask yourself, did I learn this? And if not, it's up to you to do the right thing. You've got all the resources. They're all right here. Hopefully, you've learned a lot. So, wrapping this up, go back to the first screen. Understanding this is the fundamental key to human emancipation from mental slavery. This is it. The liberal arts, the language arts, the scientific arts are what we need to learn to understand what our intuition is telling us. We have our five senses, and now we need to learn the seven liberal arts to truly discern truth from fiction. And once we get there, guess what? We will be made free. So going back to the last video, my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. How do you acquire knowledge? You seek, you ask, you knock. It'll be given to you. All right? I just gave it to you right here. This is the key so that we aren't destroyed. Because once we acquire the truth, it will make us free. Right? Romans 12:2. We cannot conform any longer to the patterns of this world. We will be transformed by the renewing of our minds. This is how we renew our minds. Galatians 7:7, we reap what we've sown. The energy that we put out into the world is the energy that gets returned to us. And if the energy we put out into the world is not based in truth and in correct rhetoric, based on correct grammar and logic, what's going to come back to us is that same negative energy. It's a feedback loop. Everything we do is a feedback loop. And that's probably why I get so frustrated, because I try to put out so much positive love and energy in the world, and I get so much negative feedback, or nothing comes back to me. And so that's what creates the frustration you see in some of my work and some of my posts. But, you know, I'm a human being like everyone else. I'm an empath. I feel deeply, and I want this world to be better for everyone's children out there. I mean, they have no future right now. If we don't do this, we need to reclaim our minds. We need to unite under natural law and create something that we can transition to and leave this broken world in the past to decay as it should. All right. I'm going to do one more video in this series to make it a 6-part series, and I'm going to be covering the top 25 logical fallacies in the next video. So again, tune into that. Please like, subscribe, and share this with everyone. I do think it is the most important video in the world because it's the key. It's the fundamental key to freeing us all, as has been seen by the quotes and all the excerpts from the books. And comment. Please leave some comments. I want to know what you guys are thinking. You know, hardly anyone ever comments on my videos. So, you know, we need to start the conversation. This is how we get humanity back. And if we don't do this, it's never going to happen. It's not going to magically happen. If we win and everything collapses without having something in place, it's going to be chaos rebuilding. Because you're going to have confusion, and we're going to descend to tribalism. If they don't completely take over, we'll descend into tribalism. And we don't want that either, because that's chaos. That's just another form of chaos. The way to build a thriving society of abundance is to do what I'm teaching you here. It's to understand Kaizen. It's to understand that our tools of learning have been lost. It's to understand that natural law. And the way to understand natural law is to reacquire the tools of learning. And that's it. That's my message for today. I love you all. And have a great day, night, wherever you are in the world. I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care.